Hey folks, Nathan here from Star Wars Beyond the Films, the Star Wars Timeline Gold, and the Star Wars Gaming Podcast Cloud City Casino at StarWarsReport.com. Bring you a look at the last of our items from this newest wave of Armada products here at the end of 2016. This time we're looking at something new. The first campaign expansion for the game, the Corellian conflict. Now, it's a little bit different here. Okay, this is the box. It's about the size of one of those expansions you would get for the LCG. Okay. It is a campaign, so basically this is going to be something where you play numerous string-together battles of Armada with a broader goal in mind and more stuff to keep track of to show your progress throughout this string of battles. It's much more of a story push behind what we're seeing with Armada. It comes with its own campaign guide that lays out how all this is going to work. But this is a $40 expansion that is interesting in that aside from giving you a new way to provide context to your game, you'll hear that word context a lot in this quick look at its various contents, it's also the first Armada expansion, well, I guess maybe except for the maneuver tool or dice and things like that. It's the first real expansion we've gotten in recent memory that doesn't have a single miniature in it. Oh, it's going to have Starfighter discs and new cards to allow you to play with new Starfighter squadrons. But there isn't a single miniature in this set. Fantasy Flight Games is kind of taking a gamble here that you've got the original game, you've maybe got that first Rebel and Imperial Fighter Squadrons expansion, and now you're going to jump into playing this, and you're just looking for a way to use the ships you already own in a new way, rather than needing new miniatures in this box. Again, $40, new context, strung together games as a campaign, no new miniatures in the box. I know that'll turn some people off, but keep listening. I think you'll find this concept interesting. I know I sure do. There's actually so much stuff in this set that I'm going to have to show this to you in a couple of layouts. I ran out of space on the playmat here to show you. But this is your Corellian conflict, Corellian sector map to keep track of the campaign. You have all these different planets, some of which are directly in the Corellian system as opposed to just the Corellian sector, which are the ones we'd expect, right? Corellia, Talos, Tralis, Centerpoint, Salonia, Draw. Yes, Centerpoint, so drawing upon legends here. We have our two main hyperspace routes coming out of it, the Corellian Run and the Corellian Trade Spine. And all these different planets either on those or nearby in the same sector. And they have your information about like what it is. There's a notation there like Spynet that affects the gameplay. You have your resource and refit values there off to the side. Your resource value and your campaign points off to the side there. Underneath, you have the assistance that it can provide to you, independent station +1 objective card, etc., etc. You notice they all have these little circles next to them. Those are spaces to put stickers. And these stickers here are going to represent things like Imperial bases, Rebel outposts, things that have been destroyed, and so forth. It actually suggests that you hang this up on a wall to track things, and that you can track it with the stickers or track it on paper otherwise if you don't want to mess up your map. This really feels like this entire box set is set up for one playthrough and that's it, unless you're making a lot of photocopies or otherwise using what they've given you in a way different than what they've actually given you. Speaking of which, we have our Corellian Conflict fleet rosters here that we fill out for each individual player. This is meant to be played by either 2 people, with each controlling 2 fleets, or 4 people, 2 on each side, each controlling their own fleet, or 3 on 3 with 6 total players. So we have 6 total fleet rosters for those individual players. And then we have a team roster here. A blank on the back. A team roster here for the Rebels and a team roster for the Imperials to track the broader progress here throughout the campaign. Tons and tons of objective cards, and then new squadrons coming into play. This is really designed to be able to be played with basically whatever you have for Armada, but the more Starfighter squadrons you have, the better in terms of being able to play with more Y-Wings, X-Wings, A-Wings, and so on, which we'll check out here with these new cards that we have to give you more options to play with them if you already have the miniatures and just need more individual squadrons to put in play with their cards. So, objectives, we have Asteroids, Nebula Outskirts, Independent Station, Hyperspace Raid, Show of Force, and the special type here, Base Defense, Fighter Wing, Base Defense, Ion Cannon, Base Defense, Armed Station, Fighter Ambush, Planetary Ion Cannon, Jamming Barrier, Capture the VIP, then Blockade Run, Close Range Intel Scan, Station Assault, and Targeting Beacons. Then Solar Corona, Salvage Run, Sensor Net, and Navigational Hazards. Now we're into our squadrons. For TIE Fighter Squadron, we have either Black Squadron or Valen Rudor, of course, from Rebels. TIE Advanced Squadron, we've got Tempest Squadron or Zertic Strom. Then for the TIE Interceptors, we have Saber Squadron or Sienna Ree. Yes, Sienna Ree from Lost Stars. This is where she is showing up in the bits of Armada, which they've promoted quite a bit. We have TIE Bombers with Gamma Squadron and Captain Jonas. Then jumping to the Rebels. For the B-Wings, we have Dagger Squadron and Ten Numb. For A-Wings, we have Green Squadron and Shara Bay, For the Y-Wings, we have Gold Squadron and Nora Wexley. And then for the X-Wings, we have Rogue Squadron and Biggs Darkladder, which is interesting because I don't think Biggs was ever part of Rogue Squadron. Wasn't it not called Rogue Squadron until he was, dead? But whatever. Okay. So lots of new squadrons added in here. Decent smorgasbord of new objectives that'll play a role in how this will play out. Essentially what's happening is there's a phase in which you're sort of discussing who's going to pull an assault where, and you wind up pairing off into battles. So like if my side's person says, hey, I'm going to do an assault at this particular location here, then that's fine. The other side has to figure out who's going to be the defender for that particular location. And they're going to have an assault that they declare. Then somebody's going to defend from the other side. And back and forth until all 6 or 4 or 2 fleets for the individual players, if it's a 2-player game, are engaged in those battles, and those battles play out. Not even necessarily in the same game session. It may be just those 2 people meeting to play the game, and that's it. But then you keep track of the results of all those battles that happened during that supposed turn, as it's called, campaign turn, and then you come back together and see what's going to happen next in the broader scope of the campaign. So think of the campaign as just sort of a structure with some benefits between individual battles, whether you retreat, survive, die, whatever, that just kind of gives you more of a context to the games that you're playing. You're still playing basically one-on-one games of Armada, but you're doing it within a context that makes it a lot more interesting and a longer spanning stream of games than just picking up and playing. But what about those tokens and any other cards? Now, I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, just in terms of specific details, because there's a lot to go into if we were really to talk about this, maybe if we did some kind of demo game or something. But let's take a look at the other components here. We have 3 space station cards here. Unarmed station, and armed station. We have 2 new dust cloud obstacles, a space station obstacle, and 3 asteroid obstacles here. We then have our squadron discs that go with all those squadrons that just had their cards revealed whenever I had the other layout going. Then we have a bunch of gray rather than white different ID tokens here. So we have 10 ship ID tokens that are gray. Then we have 10 main ship ID tokens that are gray. And then we have our squadron ID tokens that are gray here. I want to say we have, 14, I guess, of those. Then we have our flagship ID tokens, right? Main ship and otherwise. And we have a new type of ID token here. Okay, notice that these are all numbered. Well, some of them. The first 10 are numbered for ships. And then other ones are squadron. But notice that they look very different. These are what are referred to as scarred ID tokens. Basically what's going to happen is if a ship is destroyed in one of the different battles that goes on during the course of this campaign, you do get the opportunity to still play with it the next time around, but it is scarred. And scarred ships and squadrons have penalties applied to them, and then you don't want them to get destroyed while they're still scarred, because then they'll be gone for good. Although you can do refits and whatnot between the different rounds, so to speak, of the campaign. Okay, between the different turns, as it's called. So this is sort of representing those damaged ships that are still in the fight, but not in the best of shape. On the flip side of that, if you have a unique squadron that destroys a ship or a squadron and survives a battle, or if you have a ship, well, the larger vessels, right, the capital ships and whatnot, if one of them destroys another ship and survives the battle, they can become a veteran. And depending on whether it's a squadron or a ship, veterans have these tokens. There's a ton of them here. I believe it's 18 of them. They all have these two different sides, so you're seeing two sides here. I'm just showing you half and half. Basically, they can spend it once as a bonus, but then they got to flip it over. And then when they spend it that time, it's gone. So you get benefits for being a survivor who actually contributed by killing someone, some ship or squadron on the other side. And then I mentioned how there were benefits to certain locations like Spynet and Repair Yard and whatnot on the map. Well, some of those give you tokens that you're able to place on locations or otherwise spend in different phases of the game. So to keep track of that, we have 3 Spynet tokens, we have 3 Diplomat tokens, and then we have 6 skilled pilot or skilled spacer tokens here that'll be of use to you at different points throughout the game. So there is more stuff to keep track of than a standard game. So you have all kinds of paperwork, you have the map, you have the stickers, but we also have tokens to help us track these damaged ships, those that manage to survive, different benefits we get from locations, and so forth, as one would expect. Think of this game as basically being a combination of Armada meets something like Rebellion for Fantasy Flight games. A lot to keep track of, but a cool way to play that's going to give you new opportunities to do Armada battles with more of a context that matters or feels like it matters, very much like some of those longer campaign-style missions that you see with some of the large ship expansions in X-Wing. I'm looking forward to trying this one out. It's a lot of pieces to keep track of, but yeah, I mean, giving new context to Armada, giving it a sense of mattering, I think that's going to be a real fun way to get into it, because I've always loved the missions in X-Wing. We'll see.